At its 75th plenary session in October, the Executive Committee approved the Office's budget for 2025, amounting to over $10 billion. As you know, the budget has been calculated on the basis of a comprehensive assessment of the humanitarian and protection needs of refugees and other persons of concern to UNHCR, including stateless and internally displaced persons. The 2025 budget has been designed to respond to unprecedented needs and vulnerabilities of forcibly displaced and stateless persons. UNHCR planning figures suggest that the number of people in need of protection and assistance may increase to over 139 million during this coming year. Against this backdrop, UNHCR continues to depend on governments and the private sector to support its work to protect and assist refugees and to facilitate durable solutions to their plight. Today, we are also joined by representatives of UNHCR's national partners who will give an indication of their collective commitments for 2025. UNHCR is overwhelmingly, indeed more than 98%, dependent on voluntary contributions. The pledging conference thus provides an important opportunity for states and other stakeholders to express support for the work of UNHCR, including through essential funding. I would like to recall that a speakers list was opened on 13 November, and those who have registered will be invited to speak first. After we have exhausted the list of registered speakers, I will open the floor to those who wish to speak but did not yet register. Excellencias,
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is a pleasure for me to give the floor to the High Commissioner, Mr. Filippo Grandi, who will provide his observations on what played out in 2024 and that will impact UNHCR and about the needs for the year 2025. High Commissioner, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador.
All for being here. Good morning. This pledging conference, as you know, is an annual event, but of course also, as we have already discussed at EXCOM and elsewhere, it happens in a year of particular challenges. So we cannot say that it is a routine pledging conference. In my more than 40 years working in crisis, I have hardly seen such an accumulation of different challenges. Challenges for everybody. Of course, for refugees, for those hosting them, communities, states, for donor partners, for organizations like ours. The instability around the world, just look at the news of the last 48 hours, don't go even further than that, seems to increase. And the sense of unpredictability, the sense that the consequences are not yet clear, is also growing in many regions. First and foremost, perhaps today in the Middle East, and this affecting all parts of the region, particularly, of course, still Gaza, where I would be remiss if I didn't say that a ceasefire is still desperately needed, but is still eluding us. We're not present there, as you know, but we do follow very closely the situation, and we continue to worry about what we have, many of us, predicted for a long time that the conflict would expand and have impact in the rest of the region. Now, the ceasefire that was agreed in Lebanon a few days ago is positive, but as the events of yesterday have proven, it is extremely fragile. Let me nevertheless stress that a complete reversal of the ceasefire decision would be really catastrophic, because of course at the moment the situation in Syria is also worrying, with the conflict in that country reignited in Aleppo and around Aleppo. We are very worried about the impact that that resumption of the Syrian active armed conflict is having and will continue to have on people, and I'd like to echo the Secretary General's call to all parties to respect civilian lives and infrastructure. The patterns of displacement in Syria and in Lebanon reflect the unpredictability and the volatility of the situation. The ceasefire in Lebanon a few days ago triggered almost immediately a rather large return of Lebanese displaced people and even of Lebanese refugees that had crossed the border into Syria. But the events of the last few hours cast doubt about the sustainability of those returns and of that situation. Likewise, as you recall, more than 400,000 Syrian refugees in Lebanon during the Israeli bombardments crossed the border back into Syria. The focus in the weeks that followed was on monitoring the safety and security of these people on our part, with the authorization of the Syrian government, and on stabilizing their return. Now, of course, with all the events happening in both countries, we continue to monitor the situation of the Syrians that have returned. We actually, unfortunately, on the one hand, prepare for more displacement in Syria and beyond, but at the same time, I think we need to continue to remain focused on stabilization. Everybody I speak to, every government I speak to, is worried about new displacement. So please, help us be prepared if that were unfortunately to happen, but continue to work with us and others in investing, of course, in pursuing peace, but also in early recovery in Syria, which is extremely important. At the same time, further north, Ukraine remains of great concern. We are approaching now the third year of war. And like I always stress, there is, of course, a strong focus on the military situation. There is a strong focus and discussion on the political aspects of this crisis, but don't forget that this crisis has an enormous humanitarian impact. I am planning a visit to Ukraine in the probably early in the new year, and the visit will aim once again at highlighting the needs of the people impacted, especially during the very harsh winter season, when most of the energy, at a time when most of the energy infrastructure has been destroyed by Russian airstrikes. And of course, I am worried, we are very worried in fact, about the situation in and around Sudan. Since we last spoke with you and your colleagues, both here at ExCom and at the Third Committee in New York, no new light has appeared at the end of that tunnel. One wonders, dear colleagues, about what's happening to the peace efforts that we heard so much about in the past. And that should continue to be the main goal in order to stop this contest for military supremacy that is devastating the country and its own people and its people, and which has displaced already more than 12 million people. 12 million people. 1 in 4 people in Sudan today is displaced, forcibly displaced, including 3 million that have now crossed the country's borders and have gone to neighboring countries. And you know the fragility of many of these neighboring countries. Think of Chad, think of South Sudan. And also, increasingly, we see an influx of Sudanese refugees beyond the immediate neighboring countries. We've seen it in Libya, which of course has a border with Sudan, but was previously spared an influx. I've seen it myself a few weeks ago in Uganda, where tens of thousands have already arrived. And this contest for military supremacy is having an increasing devastating impact on people, and especially on women and children, in horrifying ways, as we hear from the refugees that tell us, that arrive in neighboring countries and tell us these stories. Rape, mutilation, torture, forced recruitment of children, all manners, all sorts of abuse are being perpetrated in Darfur and in other places. And by the way, this gives me the sad opportunity to flag that this impact on women and children is an increasing feature in many of these conflicts. We are observing a growth of gender-based violence everywhere as a practice and as a tool of war. We see it, like I said, in Darfur, but also increasingly, for example, in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. I was in Uganda, as I said, just a few weeks ago, and I met a number of women just arrived from the east of Congo, of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the stories I heard are unspeakable in terms of horror and violence. And of course, back to Sudan, in addition to the challenges that I have described, the refugee program in the neighboring countries, in spite of the efforts of many of you, continues to be severely underfunded. Only about 30% of the appeal has been funded. I could continue this very long list: Myanmar, Sahel, many other countries. But let me reflect that this is the 9th pledging conference that I participate in as High Commissioner for Refugees. And the impression is that every year the crises get worse. Every year peace in the crucial places where peace isn't there gets more elusive. Every year more refugees and displaced people are forced from their homes. And all worry, everybody worries about that. The question I always get is, why is there an increase in the number of refugees? What can we do to prevent this from happening? And my question back is, what are we doing about solving conflicts, about peace? European countries, for example, in my own continent, are always worried about new arrivals, about what to do to control borders, sometimes even to push back refugees. Yet, the failure to solve conflict on the part of the international community means that Europe is now surrounded by a belt of crisis. Just look at the map, from Ukraine to the Atlantic Ocean, through all the northern part of Africa. Surely people, when they are in despair, when they see no future, no peace, no successful peace, not even attempt at peace efforts, they take the road, they flee. And what are we doing to give them hope for a better future in their countries? So today is one such opportunity, not to unfortunately resolve conflict, but at least to show some collective solidarity with refugees, with the internally displaced people, with the stateless people, with countries and communities that host them. It is, of course, also for me and for all of us at UNHCR an opportunity to thank you for your support in 2024 as this year comes to a close. First and foremost, to host countries, which especially those, and there are many, who have kept their borders open in spite of the lack of resources. And a major thanks also to the communities, to the host communities, often in remote and poor and disadvantaged, climate-affected border areas that so often continue to be the first responders in refugee crisis. And of course, thanks to those countries which contributed generously. You remember that we started the year 2024 in a very uncertain and dire financial situation. Support has improved as the months went by, thanks first and foremost to the United States that once again stepped up and generously contributed to our programs, but also to many others. Please keep up the support in 2025, given the scenario that I have described. Needs will remain significant, though we managed to contain the budget that is now before you. The budget of $10.2 billion US, which the ambassador, our chair, mentioned, and which is $500 million less than the current budget of UNHCR, reflecting a relentless work of prioritization that continues because, of course, as we speak, the year is not finished, you still have time, but as we speak, the budget of 2024 is only 45% funded. That means that we do a first exercise in prioritization to present you with a manageable budget, and then, because the funding is not enough, we have to all year round conduct an exercise of prioritization to select the activities that we can implement. In this context, I have 3 asks for you, specifically related to funding, since this is the pledging conference. First, we need all of you to please, all of you who can, to please support us. We still rely on too few large donors. The United States, first among them, as I have already mentioned, but also Germany, the European Union, Sweden, France, and Japan. These were the main donors, have been the main donors in 2024. And a few others, but the group remains extremely small. I would like to recognize countries that in 2024 increased their contribution from 2023. The Republic of Korea, the United Kingdom, Sweden again, Denmark. Thanks also to the United Arab Emirates and to Qatar for increasing their contribution, and I take this opportunity to appeal to them and to other Gulf states to remain strong and predictable among our donors. Of course, broadening this donor base is therefore still crucial, but we will do everything we can, but we depend on you for that. Noting as well that non-government contributions have remained strong after, of course, a major peak in 2022 that was related to the beginning of the war in Ukraine, so the figures have not had gone back to this very high figure, but have remained strong and relatively speaking increasing, including both individual contributions that we collect through special campaigns and private sector partnerships. I just could witness this in Japan, which I visited last week. And in this respect, I want to particularly thank our national partners that play a key role in many countries in mobilizing non-government contributions. And of course, we are exploring other sources of funding. I was in Baku at the COP29, and I had useful contacts with organizations that provide climate financing, and I assessed that there was interest in supporting UNHCR among other organizations, given the increasingly recognized link between climate change and displacement. But having said all this, government funding remains key and remains institutionally very important. So please help us, especially those of you that are powerful, credible donors, help us expand the donor base. Which brings me to my second ask, one that I make every year, but that bears repeating. We desperately need more flexible funding, especially in times of great uncertainty. I described the very volatile and unpredictable patterns of displacement between Syria and Lebanon. This is a very good example where funding has to be flexible, because we must be able to respond to crises that are much more volatile than in the past and can create displacement in a manner that was not predicted. So flexibility is key to these responses. You tell us, donors tell us all the time, and we agree with you, that we must be efficient, that we must show value for the money that you give us. And I have to tell you, earmarking makes us less efficient, not more efficient. So if you want to maximize the efforts towards efficiency, please provide us with as flexible funding as your systems allow you. And help us allocate resources where they're needed. Follow the good examples of some of the donor partners, Sweden and Norway, first and foremost, but also the Netherlands, Denmark, that give us, are champions actually of not only flexible funding but multi-year funding, which is another feature of efficiency, predictability, good planning, and predictable responses. My third ask is that because of the relatively tight financial situation that we continue to find ourselves in, and because of the high rate of implementation of our program, always well exceeding 90%, we must expect, unfortunately, a low carryover of funds from 2024 into 2025, which will put additional pressure on our programs, on our operations at the beginning of next year, with grave risk of disruptions, of interruptions. Therefore, it is important that you give, those of you who can give early and substantially to ensure the continuity of our operations. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I am concerned about next year and perhaps going forward, because some of you, some of our key donors, have either signaled the possibility of reductions in funding or have flagged that decisions regarding funding are shrouded in uncertainty regarding next year. This is very, very worrying. I can tell you that we will continue to prioritize. We will continue to make special efforts to seek efficiencies and to contain our cost, and Dominique will detail more in this respect, but we do need your support. Because even adjusting an organization, as we have done in the past years, to a more efficient model, even enforcing more and more cost-saving measures which reduce our budget, takes time, takes proper management, has to be gradual. If it is inflicted too quickly on an organization, it can cause irreversible damage, not only to us, but of course to host countries and to refugees and other people that we care for. I'd like to make also one last and crucial point that we elaborate, and which is related, of course, to the resource issue very closely, which we have, of course, already discussed at length at the Executive Committee and also in New York at the Third Committee and in the margins of the General Assembly. And it is a point that I have to say, having subsequently attended the Chief Executives Board with the Secretary General, is a central point of discussion in the United Nations and in the humanitarian community at large. It's clear that humanitarian aid, despite the really appreciated efforts of everybody, remains very volatile, very fragile, I would say. There's too many crises. The budget process in many countries is subjected to too many pressures at the moment. And also, humanitarian aid, in the way it was traditionally conceived, develops dependency, often excludes host communities. And these are all features that contribute to the lack, to humanitarian aid being characterized by a lack of sustainability. It used to be in the medium term, now it is more and more in the short term that we see this lack of sustainability. Hence, the focus of humanitarian organizations, including UNHCR, on development partnerships with bilateral development organizations, with international financial institutions like the World Bank, with the private sector and its foundations, partnerships from the beginning of emergencies, building on the philosophy that you have endorsed in the Global Compact on Refugees, building on hundreds of wonderful pledges that so many of you, host countries, donor countries, private sector, development organizations have made in two subsequent global refugee fora. It is important that we continue to work to establish a real compact between hosts and donors, between humanitarian and development partners, between international, national organizations and the private sector. It is important that we ensure that the responses that we provide to refugee and displacement crisis are sustainable, based, of course, on inclusive policies on the part of hosts and predictable funding, including development funding, including bilateral funding on the part of donors. We know that this is possible. I have even recently seen very good commitments and good results in places like Kenya and Uganda. We have observed in the last few years much progress of this approach in Latin America, for example, in Colombia, in Ecuador, in Costa Rica, in Mexico. I will be in Chile just in a few days next week to celebrate with many of you the 40th anniversary of the Cartagena declarations and of the achievements that are linked to that important milestone in refugee protection, achievements that in the last few years have benefited from valuable cooperation between host governments, donor governments, UN organizations, and the development community. But we can do more than these examples that I have mentioned. We can do more, for example, to support the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh pending their return to Myanmar, which continues to be devastated by conflict. We can do more to help Afghan refugees in the long-standing host countries of Iran and Pakistan. And, by the way, to help those Afghan refugees that choose to return in spite of the fragility of the country, which raises the problem of how important it is for us to continue to operate even in fragile countries, even when dialogue with the de facto authorities, as in the case of Afghanistan, is not always easy, because that's the only way that we can relieve the pressure on host countries and find solutions to the plight of refugees. And the list, of course, of where we need to do more work is very, very long. So we will continue to remain in dialogue with you on this important issue of sustainable programming and in the coming weeks and months, and see how best, as we have agreed at EXCOM, we can implement, for those of you who are willing to do it, this fundamental concept. So before I close and to recap, these are my asks: substantive, more funding if possible, more flexible funding for sure, early contributions allowing us to start on a good footing 2025, and investment in sustainable responses. All of this is needed to meet the enormous challenges ahead, to remain effective and agile in the face of uncertainty, and to continue to maintain your continued trust and your support. My commitment to you, as always, is that UNHCR will continue to play its role, to lead the discussion on protection of those affected by displacement, be they refugees or displaced people. We'll continue to be partnering with you on seeking solutions to their plight, again, both for refugees and for internally displaced people. My commitment is that we will remain and actually try to be even more effective and efficient, and work with you in a spirit of partnership and of service. We cannot afford to give up. Thank you in advance for your support.
Muchas gracias al Alto Comisionado.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. Thank you for that important statement. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to the Director of the Division of External Relations, who will talk to us about the Global Appeal for 2025. Ms. Hyde, you have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to present our Global Appeal for 2025, which explains what we plan to do in the coming year and why we need your support. Our appeal is based on the budget of 10. In multi-year funds, including more than 600 million pledged to UNHCR for 2025, even before today. Thank you. And I'm hopeful that many of you will make pledges today that will take the funding for next year even further and enable us to plan our activities in earnest. I'm especially grateful to governments who are able to contribute unearmarked funds at this stage. 11 member states have backed a pledge on quality funding. Thank you. And I would urge especially regarding our delivery of healthcare, water and sanitation, core relief items and cash, was delivered in emergency settings. We could reach, of course, many more people if we had the resources available. And this global appeal explains why your continued support is needed and what difference it can make. The 2025 budget is lower than the current 2024 budget, reflecting shifts in operational strategies and footprints, as well as our staff realignment. But we are not stepping away. Our budget is designed for impact and is prioritized against needs. As you will see as well, our budget is prioritized where needs are greatest. Nearly $4 billion of our budget is just in these 10 countries. Nearly 1 in 3 refugee, internally displaced people and stateless people are in these countries. And these operations needs are heavily skewed towards humanitarian response, taking up more than half of the global budget for Impact Area 2. To take just the top 5 operations, this includes urgent shelter against winter conditions in Ukraine, essential relief items in Lebanon, healthcare in Sudan, water and sanitation in Ethiopia, and safe and secure settlements in Chad. Protection underpins everything we do, including to prevent and mitigate gender-based violence. You heard this from the High Commissioner. Over the past 12 months, I've met women and girls in Sudan, in South Sudan, and in Chad, all of whom courageously shared with me their stories, their experience, and gender-based violence, all of which were horrific beyond belief. When we consider that reports of conflict-related sexual violence surged 50% in 2023, this is an added imperative for us to prevent gender-based violence where we can and support survivors. Without peace, we cannot put this scourge behind us, and without funds, we're not able to scale up our programming. Conversely, these countries account for less than 20% of the global budget for solutions. You can see how, except for Ukraine, only a sliver of these countries' budgets are reserved for solutions. This illustrates how life-saving needs in the most active displacement situations tend to dominate the funding picture and overwhelm our call for solutions. In the coming year, we have a 16% increase in the budget for solutions globally and a 12% rise for our work to tackle statelessness. We plan targeted increases in protection, assistance, and empowerment in particularly countries and regions. This is a long tail of countries that are closer to peace and stability, such as Iraq and Nigeria, where I'm just back from. In those places, we are doing all we can to prioritize solutions and empowerment, and we plan to devote far more resources to voluntary repatriation, resettlement, and local solutions where possible than we were able to do just a few years ago. When you read the global appeal, you'll see that our plans do not depend merely on our financial and your financial support for our budget. A major contribution needs to come from the fulfillment of the commitments made elsewhere, including pledges that you've made at the Global Refugee Forum and so many others. As I mentioned on quality funding earlier. Consider, for example, refugee solutions or economic inclusion, and especially solutions. It is vital that these commitments bear fruit. We ask so much of countries that are hosting major refugee populations for years or even decades. They hold the key to major improvement in the welfare of refugees and stateless people. Then it can include them in their national systems and services until a durable solution is available. We do not overlook the 70 million internally displaced people whose number have doubled this past decade and may double again with conflict and climate change. Here as well, our work supports those states so that IDPs are increasingly empowered to play an active role in their own community protection and in finding durable solutions. We have already seen how inclusion can have a transformative effect on people's lives. It can unlock human potential, spur economic growth, and strengthen social cohesion. It is one of the first steps towards self-reliance and is essential for implementation of the SDGs. And it is the right thing to do because fundamentally, this is about human dignity. We now have sufficient evidence to know the impact that we can have when development partnerships reinforce the efforts of host countries, including as we work together to implement the GRF pledges. And we cannot forget the impacts of climate change, which have become a major factor in displacement in the past decade, and UNHCR will work to ensure that its life-saving humanitarian assistance, such as water and shelter, is climate resilience. The climate emergency is also driving us to reduce our own emissions. You will have seen, possibly outside of these doors, are how we're moving towards sourcing more sustainable relief items. Yes, thanks to our sustainable supply approach developed together with the IFRC and with the ICRC and private sector partners. UNHCR is on track to exceed our initial target of reducing carbon emissions of core relief items by 20% by 2025. Life-saving items like sleeping mats, kitchen sets, solar lanterns, and blankets are now made of 100% recycled material, cutting CO2 emissions by 56%. That's huge. Staying with innovation, the global appeal describes how we are working smarter. Technology allows us to monitor the impact of our assistance more closely and to give people more of a say in decisions affecting them. I was struck in my recent trips to Chad and to Syria how much people are actually arriving with their mobile phones, and using them as tools towards access to education, tools also towards information sharing with, for their own protection means. Millions of people are contacting us right now through our help websites and to seek and receive vital information. And more than 160,000 have already used the new digital gateway, which gives them direct access to our services and ownership of their personal information. We are very conscious of the need for accountability, not only to the people we serve, but also to our donors and our donor partners. We want to see your contributions used efficiently and effectively, and that is what you want. You want to see also better results. This global appeal introduces our new core output indicators and pilots a set of enabling area indicators relating to management functions. The global appeal includes enhanced visibility for over 50 of our most important operations and for 13 major displacement situations. I hope our efforts to improve evidence-based reporting and transparency will help convince you to contribute with more flexible funds. As I present the 2025 Global Appeal, I urge each of you to see this not just as a request for, as the High Commissioner flagged, early and predictable funding we so desperately need to deliver and plan, and to deliver and plan for more than just the short term, but also a shared responsibility to protect and uplift those forced to flee. In such uncertain times, every contribution strengthens the global commitment to safeguarding dignity, ensuring safety, and creating opportunities for millions of refugees, IDPs, and stateless people. Together, we can turn challenges into solutions, and with your partnership, we can offer hope where it is needed most. Thank you for your unwavering support and dedication to our vital cause. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hyde, for your presentation and for the Global Appeal for 2025. Before I open the floor for statements, I would just like to remind delegations to send a copy of their statements to UNHCR, if they have not done so, to facilitate the interpretation process. The corresponding email address is up on the screen. I would also like to remind delegations of the process for pledging contributions. You will have already received the pledging form together with the invitation to the meeting held on 13 November, where you were asked to fill in the form or to send a pledging funding in writing to UNHCR by 28 November at the latest. The contribution pledges sent to UNHCR, duly signed and authorized, will then be included in the total amount which will be announced at the end of this morning's meeting. This means that any other funding pledge announced today will only be included in the total that will be announced once UNHCR has received and verified either a pledging form or a letter that has been duly signed. I would now like to open the floor for statements, starting with the first delegation listed on the list of speakers. I would like to remind you that any delegation that would like to take the floor but has not yet registered on the list of speakers must reach out to the Secretariat. Now, I would like to remind delegations that the speaking limit is set at 3 minutes. States or organizations speaking on behalf of an established number of states or a group of organizations have a 5-minute speaking limit. Now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the European Union on behalf of the EU and its member states.
I have the honour to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states. And a big thank you to the High Commissioner for your opening remarks, which were both insightful and very moving. We've taken good note. The EU and its member states share your deep concern about the constantly rising number of forcibly displaced persons worldwide. This calls for an accelerated implementation of the humanitarian development nexus, addressing root causes and systemic changes to decrease aid dependency and foster resilience, with UNHCR maintaining its core humanitarian and protection mandate while mobilizing development and peace actors. For decades, the EU and its member states have been a leading and reliable humanitarian development and peace donor. Team Europe works to support a sustainable approach to humanitarian support, focusing on prevention, resilience, and long-term solutions. In 2023, the EU and its member states provided nearly 1/3 of all global humanitarian aid recorded by OCHA. According to the latest OECD DAC figures, Team Europe contributed the largest share of global funding, about 42%, for refugee situations in low and middle-income countries. And so far, in 2024, the EU and its member states have contributed close to $1 billion to UNHCR's budget. This has included significant contributions of flexible funding, including unearmarked or multi-year funding by many of our member states, as you highlighted, High Commissioner. So it's a tangible example of EU solidarity, and it's also a demonstration of Team Europe delivering, making an impact with burden and responsibility sharing at the very core. The EU and its member states reiterate their full commitment to continue addressing forced displacement crisis, including protracted situations. And over the next 5 years, the European Commission, which formally started its mandate on December 1st, with the first working day yesterday, will work on an integrated approach to fragility and will boost efforts on humanitarian diplomacy to promote respect for international humanitarian law and humanitarian principles. It will also focus on finding durable solutions for forcibly displaced persons and ensuring access to human rights, notably for stateless persons, and will explore ways to bring about a more equitable division of responsibility among donors, which include private sector engagement. UNHCR and the global humanitarian system are facing serious funding shortfalls, leaving many people in need without adequate assistance, especially in protracted crisis. The EU and its member states also reiterate their call for a strong collective effort to mobilize additional global funding for humanitarian development and peace efforts, with traditional donors remaining engaged and new and emerging donors encouraged to contribute to achieve a more balanced and sustainable funding structure. In parallel, we need to better operationalize linkages across humanitarian, development and peace instrument. And we very much in this context welcome UNHCR's focus on sustainable responses and look forward to seeing this transformed into new approaches on the ground. Let me finish by welcoming UNHCR's interagency initiatives, notably with IOM, both on the route-based approach and on internal displacement. We expect the UN system to ensure a joined-up approach to internal displacement, with UNHCR, IOM, UNDP, and UN Development Coordination Office joining forces towards durable solutions to internal displacement beyond the end of the mandate of Special Advisor Robert Paphos. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Switzerland. Chair, Deputy High Commissioner, Switzerland has the pleasure to announce a contribution to the activities of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, for a total amount of 34 million Swiss francs for 2025, broken down as follows: a maximum of 18 million of non-earmarked funding and a maximum of 16 million for supporting specific UNHCR operations throughout the world, including 2 million for Ukraine. These specific amounts will be confirmed by the Swiss Federal Council in March 2025 and also depend on the parliamentary decision concerning the budget earmarked for international cooperation. For 2026, Switzerland will be aiming at the same amounts depending on approval by the Federal Council and the Parliament. Switzerland is prepared to mobilize additional means to cope with sudden or emerging crises during 2025. It also contributes to the Central Fund for Emergency Intervention, CERF, to which the UNHCR has access. Switzerland further intends to pursue the secondment of experts to UNHCR, depending on available profiles, to the tune of 2 to 3 million Swiss francs. As announced at the Second World Forum on Refugees, Switzerland undertakes to strengthen the quality of its funding. In 2024, it achieved its objectives and undertook to do the same in following years. We also encourage all UNHCR donors to also consider this qualitative dimension. In 2023, Switzerland further surpassed its funding objective by 10% for the Global Covenant on Refugees with 330 million Swiss francs. The meeting of high-ranking officials in December 2025 in December will be a strong high point, and we're looking forward to it. It will give us an opportunity to confirm our collective undertaking in the spirit of the Global Covenant. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States of America.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, UNHCR colleagues. High Commissioner, colleagues, it is an honor to reaffirm the United States' commitment to the humanitarian mission of UNHCR. The surging scale and complexity of crises we face as a global community demand that we come together to provide support and solidarity to those who have been forced to flee their homes. And today, I am proud to share the United States pledge of $200 million to UNHCR's 2025 Global Appeal, a pledge that underscores our steadfast commitment to ensuring that refugees, stateless persons, and displaced communities have the protection, care, and opportunities they deserve. This pledge builds on our long history of partnership with UNHCR. UNHCR's provision of life-saving assistance to refugees and displaced communities around the world is remarkable. Your commitment to protecting human dignity and creating pathways for hope, even in the most difficult of circumstances, continues to make a profound impact globally. While the scale of global displacement is staggering, it is important to recognize that we can address these challenges together. As individuals find themselves displaced for years and even decades, we must plan for and deliver approaches from the start that are sustainable and foster inclusion in national and development systems. This is about evolving humanitarian assistance from creating dependence to creating opportunity. It's about helping people rebuild their lives and reclaim agency, where refugees can live with dignity and host countries can harness the potential that refugees bring to their economies, cultures, and societies. Our commitment is not just about funding. We are also calling for broader system-wide reforms. We urge the international community, governments, the private sector, civil society organizations, and local communities to work together in new ways to prioritize sustainable approaches to refugee needs. This is a collective challenge, and the solutions we need will only be achieved through collaboration, innovation, and bold action. High Commissioner, let today's pledges serve as a call to action for all member states and partners. The challenges we face demand that we rethink how we work together. The United States is committed to ensuring that our collective pledges lead to real, lasting change for those who need it most. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to the representative of Japan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. High Commissioner, distinguished colleagues, I would like to begin by paying tribute to the High Commissioner and all UNHCR staff for their dedicated work under difficult and challenging conditions. The Global Appeal 2025 anticipates that there will be over 139 million forcibly displaced and stateless people globally next year. Japan is deeply concerned about the year-on-year increase in the number of people in the need of the UNHCR assistance. Mr. Chair, in 2024, the Japanese government contributed more than $118 million to UNHCR. To ensure that no one is left behind, Japan has been striving to reach the most vulnerable. In order to better respond to underfunded crises last year, we revised our policy to pursue quality and flexible funding where appropriate. As for 2025, I would like to announce our initial pledge of $47 million to UNHCR, subject to approval by our National Diet. With an additional contribution to be decided on next year, Japan will continue to respond to the many refugee crises around the world, including emergencies that have been underfunded in 2024. Mr. Chair, we are currently witnessing significant political divisions within the international community. We must address the situation of each and every forcibly displaced person from a human security perspective. In doing so, we must remain grounded in humanitarian principles and respect for international humanitarian law. Japan expresses its appreciation to all refugee hosting countries for their long-standing generosity. At the same time, there is a need for greater burden and responsibility sharing and more effective measures to assist refugees. It is therefore crucial to engage a wide range of stakeholders, including not only traditional donors and humanitarian organizations, but also development agencies, MDBs, the private sector, NGOs, and civil society. Thus, at the second Global Refugee Forum last year, Japan launched a multi-stakeholder pledging initiative on the humanitarian development peace nexus, encompassing various types of development cooperation. As the recent UNHCR report No Escape shows, there is an obvious link between climate change, conflict, and forced displacement. Our mission would like to continue to play a facilitating role in improving access to climate finance for countries hosting refugees. Finally, I wish to thank our High Commissioner Grandi for his recent visit to Japan, which served as a reminder to our society of the importance of international cooperation to address humanitarian crises. As a co-convener of the GRF, Japan is committed to playing a proactive role in the preparations for the high-level official meetings in December next year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sweden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. High Commissioner, Sweden aligns itself with the statement made by the European Union and wishes to add the following in our national capacity. First of all, I wish to express Sweden's profound appreciation of the remarkable work and dedication by the UNHCR in providing protection and life-saving assistance to millions of displaced people across the world. As the number of persons in need of humanitarian aid continue to increase and humanitarian crises only grow larger in numbers and more complex in nature, UNHCR's work is more important than ever. And as you underlined, High Commissioner, multi-year and flexible contributions are prerequisites prerequisites for UNHCR's ability to respond quickly to new emergencies and to remain a resilient protector of people affected by prolonged crises. Mr. High Commissioner, thank you for pointing out that Sweden is the top contributor of unearmarked and multi-year funding to UNHCR, allowing UNHCR to remain agile and to respond to urgent humanitarian crises in situations like in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Myanmar, Lebanon, and many others. Our commitment to refugee issues is not only reflected in our quality funding, but also through our engagement in resettlement, our steadfast commitment to our GRF pledges, and of our new migration strategy for development cooperation. Sweden will continue to do its part in the spirit of global burden sharing. Mr. Chairman, we continue to deliver on our commitments made in our multi-annual strategic partnership agreement with the UNHCR for the period of 2022 to 2025. In September this year, Sweden decided to prepay 185 million Swedish kronor in advance of 2025 and will pledge an additional 738 million Swedish kronor for 2025, subject to a formal decision by the government of Sweden later this month. Additionally, Sweden will continue to prioritize a needs-based approach by allocating humanitarian funding through our development agency SIDA to meet the needs of the most vulnerable. Mr. Chair, Mr. High Commissioner, Sweden's pledge for the coming year reflects our steadfast and committed support to UNHCR. We will continue to value our close partnership and remain a dedicated partner to meet the needs of millions of displaced and stateless people across the world. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I'd like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Turkey.
Mr. High Commissioner, distinguidos representantes,
our world is coping with unprecedented crisis, and next year we have to take decisive steps jointly. We must deal with the far-ranging crisis. There has been an escalation of crisis worldwide. The situation could further deteriorate as well. We must take steps today to avoid this worrying trend.
Multiple crises are displacing millions, forcing people to flee their countries in search of safety. While I will not reiterate the figures the High Commissioner has already cited, the scale of displacement we see, particularly in Gaza, Syria, Sudan, Myanmar, Yemen, Ukraine, Lebanon, and Afghanistan, is unparalleled in history and requires an equally historic response. We agree with the High Commissioner that the international community must stand united to support those forcibly displaced. The irony is that we risk having less funds at a time when we need them the most. We support the agenda of efficiency and sustainability and calls for even more rigor in this regard. We also support the call for not creating lasting dependencies on aid, the emphasis on rallying the private sector and responsible partners. Building up resilience, addressing fragilities, and promoting durable solutions are also critical. And perhaps most importantly, early warning and effective crisis prevention and resolution are Turkey's permanent emphases. We can and must do more on all those fronts. The world is one unit, humanity is one. When one part is ill, all parts feel the pain. We're guided by the principle of leaving no one behind, and since 2015, Turkey has been one of the world's leading providers of humanitarian assistance relative to national income. We continue to host nearly 3 million of Syrians who have sought refuge within our borders. We are committed to supporting the UNHCR's vital work. Today, in addition to our own efforts, which are really vast, we are pleased to announce Turkey's pledge of $300,000 to the 2025 Global Appeal in contribution of the work of the UNHCR. As the country hosting one of the highest numbers of refugees in the world, Turkey's pledge displays our commitment to the UNHCR's mandate and durable solutions. We commend all other pledges announced today. Turkey remains steadfast in support for life-saving humanitarian efforts which play a crucial role in alleviating the suffering of those in need. Before I conclude, I should take this opportunity to honor those who have lost their lives in the line of duty. We send humanitarian workers our profound respect as well as gratitude for continuing to persevere in service of humanity. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for your statement, which was delivered in flawless Spanish for the first part. Now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to begin by expressing my gratitude to the High Commissioner for the opening remarks. I'm also grateful to the Director for her presentation about the global appeal for 2025. The humanitarian sector is facing another challenging year in 2024. Humanitarian funding is expected to return to the 2021 level, and it became a daunting task for all. UNHCR is no exception. We recommend its efforts in navigating this financial hardship and reaching to the forcibly displaced persons most in need. Chair and High Commissioner, my government reaffirms its commitment to a more equitable burden and responsibility sharing in these circumstances. We are pleased to announce approximately $32 million of the pledge for 2025. I would like to further explain several aspects of this pledge. First, the pledge includes substantial quality funding. Korea is a member of the multi-stakeholder pledge quality funding for refugee situations. We will try to maintain the current level of unearmarked contribution, which is expected to be around $16.7 million next year in light of the exchange rate. Second, Korea is committed to the inclusion and resilience of refugees and displaced persons in host countries. We must also support returnees and find solutions in the countries of origin. In this connection, we will continue our multi-year support in the countries such as Myanmar, Peru, Uganda, Burundi, and other countries in Africa and Middle East. Third, in addition to the pledge, Korea will provide further support in the course of 2025. 1 year ago, Korea made a pledge of $28 million for this year. However, the actual contribution exceeded $65 million as of early December. Together with the private sector contribution, Korea contributed over $100 billion for the first time in its history. Chair and High Commissioner, finally, under financial distress, humanitarian assistance should be spent with better performance and partnership. In this regard, my delegation encourages UNHCR to continue to carry out its reform and transformation, as well as to strengthen its transparency and accountability. Korea will continue to work with UNHCR and other partners on this journey. Thank you, Chair.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Germany.
High Commissioner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking the many countries which have graciously opened the door for their neighbors and the people forced to flee. The protection of refugees is an act of humanity, but it is also a shared obligation of the international community. Germany itself hosts 3.5 million refugees, and we stand firm in our solidarity not only with the displaced, but also with host states and communities worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, despite many challenges, burden and responsibility sharing as a host, as a donor, or both, remains essential for the functioning of the international protection system. As the number of those displaced over the past years increased, so has funding, even though not proportionally. Germany is a strong supporter of the UNHCR's sustainable response approach as a way to enable the necessary
The interpreters apologise. There's a problem with the microphone for the delegate.
aid to more comprehensive government-led responses that focus on protection, empowerment and inclusion of forcibly displaced populations. Such a shift seeks to enhance the resilience and economic stability of hosting countries.
Un segundo, por favor, que hay un
There's a problem with the microphone which is interfering with the interpretation. This seems to be a technical issue. There's a lot of static in the microphone.
Okay. Should I start from the beginning?
Yes, please go ahead. From the beginning, yes, please.
Germany is a strong supporter of UNHCR's sustainable response approach as a way to enable the necessary shift from basic subsistence care and conventional humanitarian aid to more comprehensive government-led responses that focus on protection, empowerment and inclusion of forcibly displaced populations. Such a shift seeks to enhance the resilience and economic stability of hosting communities, working towards long-term sustainable solutions. In this spirit, new partnerships with development actors and the World Bank should create new funding opportunities. Consequently, we call on all member states, as well as private, philanthropic and civil society actors, to critically evaluate their ability to mobilize or increase financial contributions in order to support sustainable responses. Germany remains strongly committed to implement the pledges made during last year's Global Refugee Forum in key areas such as climate action, economic inclusion and social protection, education or the protection from gender-based violence to meaningfully improve the life of refugees and increase their participation. Ladies and gentlemen, in the coming year, Germany will face considerable budget uncertainties and very probably cuts. However, our commitment to UNHCR, refugees and host communities remains firm. I can assure you of our continued substantial political as well as financial support for UNHCR. Therefore, I am glad that I can already announce an initial pledge of €73 million in humanitarian and development funds to support UNHCR's work in 2025, which we aim to further expand throughout the next year. Germany has been providing a substantial share of its contribution as flexible funding, and we remain committed to ensure quality funding in 2025. High Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, before closing, let me most warmly thank you, High Commissioner, and all of your team for the enormous dedication and tireless work to help protect the lives of so many displaced, very often in difficult working environments. Thank you for your commitment.
Thank you very much, Madam, for your statement. Now I would like to give the floor to the representative of Ireland.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, High Commissioner. Just to say at the outset that Ireland, of course, aligned itself with the statement made earlier by the European Union. High Commissioner, I want to begin by recognising, of course, the essential work of UNHCR and indeed of its local partners. As the needs increase and resources decline, it's quite clear that UNHCR continues to be confronted by impossible choices in unimaginable circumstances. Your work is often necessarily in insecure and dangerous environments, and in that context, and recognising the sacrifices that have been made by UNHCR staff and by humanitarians globally, it's critical that all countries recognise the urgent need to uphold international humanitarian law and to protect civilians and humanitarian workers everywhere. We too wish to acknowledge, in particular, the challenges facing host countries and communities whose efforts are front and centre of our responses. And whilst we express gratitude for those efforts, our thanks are manifestly insufficient. We must maintain our support and uphold our past promises. Furthermore, it is crucial to recognise those millions of people affected by conflicts and disasters which do not make the headlines. Ireland is acutely aware of the increasing number of neglected crises which do not receive adequate funding, and we continue to centre our attention on those furthest behind in our priorities. We acknowledge the invaluable work of UNHCR in this context. We also take this opportunity to commend UNHCR for its continuing commitment to protecting refugees, asylum seekers, IDP and stateless persons of all ages, genders and diverse backgrounds, including LGBTIQ+ persons. High Commissioner, UNHCR is a central and valued humanitarian partner for Ireland, and our level of funding, support and cooperation on a wide range of issues demonstrates the values that we continue to place on your work and on this partnership. At our recent strategic dialogue held in Dublin, our shared perspective was again clear, not just on what the key challenges are, but also on the best approaches to resolving them. Ireland's support to UNHCR has grown in recent years, making UNHCR one of the largest recipients of Irish humanitarian funding. For 2025, we are maintaining our pledge at €24 million, over half of which will be delivered in core funding, demonstrating our lasting commitment to flexible humanitarian financing. To this end, and as you are aware, we are fully supportive and engaged on quality funding on a multi-year basis. We will also continue our funding for specific appeals in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Jordan and Venezuela. I want to emphasise that this pledge is a minimum. We exceeded our pledge this year. We expect to do so again next year. It is likely that further funding will be allocated to newly arising crises or surges in existing ones. High Commissioner, 2024 has been a year of unprecedented humanitarian need and one of unprecedented danger for those who respond to those needs. As crises continue to protract and intensify, Ireland places increasing value on the work of UNHCR, and we remain steadfast in our support. We look forward to strengthening our partnership and ensuring that those displaced by conflict and disaster are supported in order to live in dignity. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. The delegate of France.
Merci, Monsieur le. Thank you, President and High Commissioner. The global appellee calls upon us to play a key role here. We'd like to thank you for your action and for all of your team's efforts, and you can count on the resolute support of France. Our priority is to re-establish peace, and we welcome the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, which was the result of lengthy efforts by our country and others, in close cooperation with the US in particular. And we call upon respect of the ceasefire to restore security to Israelis and Lebanese and to ensure the safe return of persons to these two countries to their place of residence. And we call upon a ceasefire in Gaza, where the war is still raging. France will pursue its efforts to see a cessation of hostilities and the freeing of all hostages and the entry of humanitarian assistance to Gaza, and that is why our minister went to the Gaza Humanitarian Conference organised in Cairo. The respect of international humanitarian law and international human rights in all crises is primordial, where civilians are the prime victims, and we call upon the full respect of IHL in all circumstances. Commissioner, alongside you, we must opt for solidarity with the host communities and countries, and we welcome the efforts by Uganda, Chad, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and so many others who welcome in refugees. France has tripled its voluntary contributions to UNHCR. In 2024, as in 2023, we allocated some €120 million to support UNHCR's activities in many crises, including in a flexible manner. We did note your call for flexible funding. And 17 additional millions have been allocated, dispersed now for Lebanon since the Paris conference. And we call upon women's participation in responses to crisis in Colombia, Ethiopia and Ukraine. To finance the humanitarian system, diversification is vital. It is vital that we involve new stakeholders, financial institutions, development agencies, the private sector, and to make sure that they are more involved. Our commitment can also be seen within our own territory. We're committed to rehousing 3 million refugees this year, including Afghan refugees. Commissioner, thank you once again, and I reiterate France's steadfast support for your organisation. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Australia.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, High Commissioner. Australia has a valued and long-standing partnership with UNHCR and acknowledges its tireless efforts to respond to humanitarian crises. We again commend UNHCR staff for their work in complex situations and acknowledge the risks they face. It is of deep concern that 2024 is now the deadliest year on record for humanitarian workers. Aid workers' life-saving work should not come at the cost of their lives. This is why Australia convened the Ministerial Group for the Protection of Humanitarian Personnel in September to strengthen commitment to international law and drive action, including a new declaration for the protection of humanitarian personnel, which will be open to all countries. 2024 has again challenged the global humanitarian system. There are more conflicts, violence, socio-economic crises and climate change. This, combined with fluctuating humanitarian funding, has seen forced displacement increase to over 122 million. Australia is concerned about UNHCR funding shortfalls and the corresponding impacts for those it assists. We support UNHCR's approach to sustainable refugee aid to ensure development and peace partners are also part of solutions from the start to optimise the resources applied to displacement crises. Australia is pleased to confirm our flexible core funding commitment to the UNHCR of Australian dollars 25 million. Australia's strategic partnership framework with UNHCR commits an annual contribution of $25 million through to 2026. In 2024, we have again increased the flexibility of our funding and encourage others to do the same. We will also continue to consider responses to specific crisis appeals, such as our support in 2024 for Bangladesh and Myanmar and host countries neighbouring Afghanistan and Sudan. We are delivering on our Global Refugee Forum pledge commitments for these situations, but know that the work is not done. Most recently, Australia joined Afghanistan Resolve Pledge Engagement Forum. Australia's new humanitarian policy reaffirms our commitment to reinforcing the humanitarian system and to addressing the shared global challenge of displacement. Many countries in our region have a proud history of refugee protection stewardship. We commend those states who are generously hosting refugees in all parts of the world. Australia remains committed to assisting host communities and displaced persons, including displaced Rohingyas and Afghans, while advocating for durable solutions to displacement and for continued and sustained support from other states. We will maintain 20,000 places in Australia's 2024-25 humanitarian program, ensuring permanent resettlement to those most in need. This is the first time since 1982 that Australia has had 2 consecutive years of an intake at this level. We remain committed to assisting states to establish and grow refugee resettlement programs and explore innovative and sustainable complementary pathways. We support UNHCR's commitment to age, gender and diversity, inclusive service delivery and commitments to meaningful refugee participation. We thank UNHCR for its critical global role in protecting displaced people and look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to the representative of Finland.
Chair, High Commissioner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Finland aligns itself with the statement by the European Union on behalf of its member states. We thank the High Commissioner for his opening remarks. First, we wish to commend UNHCR for its dedication and resilience in facing a tough economic situation. Despite the challenging times, you and your staff have remained committed to your critical work in supporting those in need. As the gap between humanitarian needs and resources continues to increase, prioritization and efforts to seek efficiency and synergies with other UN agencies are more important than ever. This situation also calls for new kinds of partnerships with development actors. We also appreciate UNHCR's long-term commitment to private sector partnerships and engagement in innovative initiatives with companies in addressing displacement-related challenges. We encourage UNHCR to explore new ways to broaden its donor base. As the number of forcibly displaced persons has reached unprecedented heights, it's imperative to jointly address the underlying factors that fuel violence and conflict. We must increase our efforts to enhance respect for the international humanitarian law and protection of civilians in conflicts and invest in peace building and conflict prevention globally. UNHCR is one of the most important humanitarian partners for Finland, and we value our long-standing partnership and dialogue. We will continue our humanitarian funding with a focus on people in the most vulnerable situations, emphasizing urgent, life-saving relief assistance, as well as underfunded and rapidly deepening crises in the world. Finland pays special attention to disability inclusion in its humanitarian assistance. Today, I'm pleased to pledge 20 million euros from Finland to UNHCR in 2025. We remain committed to quality funding, and therefore approximately 1/3 of this amount will be unearmarked funding disbursed early in the year. We also prioritize other flexible funding modalities. In recent years, approximately 80% of our total funding to UNHCR has been flexible. Flexible funding is critical in allowing UNHCR to respond rapidly and strategically to the needs of forcibly displaced persons and refugees. Through this pledge, Finland reaffirms its continued commitment to supporting UNHCR and its invaluable work. I thank you.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Merci. Monsieur le Président.
President, High Commissioner, the world is going through very difficult times. We're seeing a multiplication of sources of tension and a persistence of conflicts involving a greater number of displaced persons, as there's a lack of sustainable solutions guaranteeing a safe, dignified, voluntary return. The UNHCR has a very important mandate to guarantee the necessary protection and assistance to these populations. This mandate can only be accomplished with appropriate resources. For the UNHCR to be able to respond in the best way possible to the different needs, the organisation requires our support to complete its humanitarian mission free from any political pressure. As a host country for refugees, we allocate a great deal of resources to ensure the best possible welcome to displaced persons, forcibly displaced persons, providing them with the necessary assistance and support through access to social services, in particular education and health. Algeria shall continue to multiply its efforts together with the UN agencies, NGOs, our partners and the private sector as well, to take care of these refugees. As the UNHCR does, we call upon the international community to deploy additional efforts, and we call upon donors to provide better assistance to these refugees. By way of support to the UNHCR, Algeria has the honour to announce a voluntary contribution of $100 million for 2025.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Chair. Denmark aligns with the statement made by EU on behalf of EU and its member states. High Commissioner, I have in my talking points some facts about the context that we are having this meeting in today, but I would just suffice to say that we share your assessment. I couldn't describe or deplore, for instance, for that way it more accurately. We are in a continued crisis of forced displacement driven by violence, prosecution and instability, and escalated by the impacts of climate change. And therefore it's also clear for us that the need for substantive support for the work of UNHCR has never been more evident and more clear. We're deeply worried about the growing gap between the needs and funding, not only for UNHCR, but across the humanitarian community. And it calls for sustained and broadened donor commitment and efficiency, and it calls for strengthened nexus approaches focused on solutions. So we very much welcome what you have described, High Commissioner, and we support UNHCR's commitment to make a shift towards more sustainable responses in strong collaboration with development partners and actors. It's evident that the current response model in protracted crisis is not efficient, appropriate or dignified, neither for refugees, host countries or for the partners. And we must do things differently and better, and Denmark stands ready to support you. UNHCR is Denmark's largest humanitarian partner. We strongly value our long-standing and deep partnership, which was also reconfirmed during your visit, High Commissioner, to Copenhagen earlier this year. And I'm therefore very pleased to announce that the Danish government, subject to parliamentary approval, will provide UNHCR with a contribution of approximately $85 million, or totally 601 million Danish kroner to be precise, in 2025. And this is a record high pledge from our side. The vast majority of the contribution is unearmarked or softly earmarked funding and multi-year. And we therefore continue our long-standing tradition of providing UNHCR with unearmarked, flexible and multi-year support. We do this because, as you also described, High Commissioner, it ensures the much-needed predictability, operational flexibility for UNHCR, and because it's simply the most efficient and sustainable type of funding. And as a proud co-lead of the GRF multi-stakeholder pledge on quality funding for refugee situations, we call on all donors, small and large, to step up quality funding for UNHCR. Let me finish by expressing our sincere gratitude to all UNHCR staff all over the world, tirelessly carrying out their work under very often very difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Muchas gracias, Señor Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, High Commissioner, for your stark introduction. Stark because the situation is stark. It's been another year of relentless emergencies which have caused so many vulnerable people to flee their homes right across the world, whether that's as a result of Russian aggression in Ukraine, the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon, or, of course, of climate change, which is exacerbating the drivers of displacement. At times it does feel as if we are trapped in a sort of spiral of ever-worsening displacement. And let me pay particular tribute to you, High Commissioner, and indeed to your team, for your efforts to bring our attention to the crisis in Sudan. We're trying to do our part. We've doubled our humanitarian aid, but funding isn't enough if that aid actually isn't reaching those who need it, and if we're not actually bringing an end to this devastating and wholly unnecessary conflict. High Commissioner, we know that our understanding of statelessness, a condition that strips people of their most basic human rights, is going to evolve over the year to come as improvements in data show us the sheer scale of the issue globally. We in the UK are committed to tackling the issue. We're an early member of the Global Alliance to End Statelessness, and we encourage others here to join us in working towards a future where statelessness becomes a thing of the past. Let me thank Dominique for her introduction of your global appeal for 2025. If I may say, in this kind of moment of sort of festive cheer, Dominique didn't bring us very much festive cheer, given the sheer number of forcibly displaced people expected, as you say, to reach over 139 million over the next 12 months. Just seems never to end. But under your leadership, High Commissioner, your efforts to moderate the annual budget through increased efficiencies are important. We don't underestimate the challenge that you face in driving through these vital reforms, but they are vital. We remain a committed partner to you, High Commissioner, and your organisation. And over the past year, we have actually increased significantly our contributions to over $100 million US, which is an increase of over 40% on 2023. Sadly, the curious idiosyncrasies of the British fiscal calendar make it difficult for me to announce an overall annual commitment for 2025, but I am pleased to confirm that the UK will provide an unearmarked core contribution of £33 million in 2025, which we will then supplement through country-specific contributions dispersed throughout the year in line with most urgent needs. And we are certainly committed to supporting forcibly displaced people globally, as well as the countries and communities who host them so generously. Once again, we extend our deep appreciation, as you did, High Commissioner. But we know that words are cheap, they're not sufficient. And as the most recent Compact Indicator report set out, we are the 5th largest ODA donor to refugee response worldwide. We're proud of that, and we urge others with the ability to do so to step up their efforts too. We also, given the context, we welcome new ideas, so we are a firm supporter of your sustainable responses approach, High Commissioner. Including refugees in existing national systems isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Unlocking human capital via refugees' contributions to their host communities and economies, and avoiding costly parallel arrangements which demand too much of stretched budgets. We recognise, High Commissioner, Senor Presidente, the UNHCR's tremendous efforts to meet these extraordinary challenges. And I wanted to end, High Commissioner, by offering a personal word of thanks to you as you enter your final year of your term, but also to all your staff, so many of them working on the front line in such dangerous situations, for your dedication and your commitment to the cause of refugees. We all owe you a debt of thanks. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Norway.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, High Commissioner. Colleagues, we have heard today about an unprecedented number of forcibly displaced, many trapped in prolonged crisis and in precarious protection environments. UNHCR and partners are facing immense challenges in providing protection and support. Norway recognizes UNHCR's difficult situation as needs continue to far exceed funding. We commend UNHCR for continuing to deliver on its core mandate and strategy to the extent possible, and for making difficult choices and hard priorities, protecting those most in need, including children, and by responding to sexual and gender-based violence. UNHCR has also a key role to enable solutions for displaced persons. Norway supports UNHCR's gradual shift towards increased activities in support of self-reliance, inclusion, and solutions. Viewing protracted displacement crisis solely as a humanitarian responsibility is not sustainable. Refugees, IDPs, and stateless persons need comprehensive support to rebuild their lives. We therefore welcome the ambition to enhance cooperation with relevant authorities, the affected displaced populations, host communities, and long-term development actors, to gain leverage with these efforts, to reduce the dependencies that you refer to, High Commissioner, and to position UNHCR among these actors to do what you are best at. In other words, sustainable response. UNHCR can continue to rely on Norway as a consistent partner with multi-year funding, as part of our burden and responsibility sharing with hosting states. Pending final approval by Parliament, we estimate that our total contribution will exceed 1 billion Norwegian kroner in 2024. As in previous years, more than half of our pledged funding for 2025, 630 million Norwegian kroner, is unearmarked. This year we pledged an additional 30 million kroner to a program supporting the protection of children in armed conflict. Both are part of multi-year contributions and an expression of the trust that we place in you. Chair, High Commissioner, let me conclude by expressing Norway's appreciation for the dedication of UNHCR staff and their willingness to stay and deliver under very challenging circumstances worldwide. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Netherlands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And the High Commissioner, thank you for your opening remarks, and also to to Director Hyde, Dominique, for your opening remarks and statements. As Ambassador Knudsen said, they're both insightful and moving. Mr. Chair, less than 2 months ago at the ExCom, we took stock of the last 12 months and looked ahead at an uncertain future. High Commissioner, you then presented us with UNHCR's vision on how to respond to known as well as unknown crises. A vision that not only focuses on crucial life-saving assistance and protection, but also on sustainable responses that promote refugee inclusion, resilience, and reliance. And vision is important, High Commissioner. Vision serves as a roadmap. It simplifies the decision-making process. And as my British colleague who just spoke, and he said it the last time as well, inclusion in national systems is not only the right thing to do, it is also the smart thing to do. The Netherlands would like again, High Commissioner, to express our full support to you, to your vision, your mandate, and for the indispensable work of UNHCR staff all around the world. But words are not enough to make a difference. They need to be turned into action. There are three areas where we, the Netherlands, are honored and pleased to support your good work. First, like last year, the Netherlands commits 35 million unearmarked core funding to enable UNHCR to rapidly respond to emergencies, to support underfunded operations and needs, and to support UNHCR's organizational flexibility and adaptive capacity. And again, and here we support the call from Sweden and yourself, we urgently call on all donors in this room, large and small, to step up unearmarked and flexible funding for these purposes. And I just listened with pleasure to my British and Norwegian colleagues who are good leaders in this. And my second point, Mr. Chair, as pledged at the Global Refugee Forum last year, we started the second phase of our Prospects partnership. As part of our multi-annual development contribution to UNHCR, in the context of this partnership, the Netherlands commits another 35 million euro for next year. In addition, we remain committed to instruments such as the IFC UNHCR Joint Initiative. With these partnerships and instruments, we hope to contribute to the Sustainable Responses agenda of UNHCR. And my third and final point, Mr. Chair, we will substantially contribute to support for Afghan displaced people and host communities in Pakistan, protection assistance in Libya, and strengthening protection and access to basic services for vulnerable refugees and asylum seekers in Tunisia. Together with the EU and Italy, we will support UNHCR's important work in Niger, Algeria, and Morocco via the Regional Development and Protection Programme for North Africa. Commissioner, you can count on these commitments, and you can count on us, not only as a donor, but also as a long-standing partner and as a friend. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Italy. Thank you, Chair.
Dear Deputy High Commissioner, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Italy aligned itself to EU statement and would like to take the opportunity of this pledging conference to renew its strong commitment and appreciation to UNHCR mandate and courageous activities for forcibly displaced and stateless worldwide. As also highlighted in the global appeal, we hear your call to action to address the unprecedented scale of a projected 139.3 million persons of concern in 2025. Let me therefore share a few points Italy considers important to mention during this meeting. First, let me reiterate Italy's commitment to the respect of international humanitarian law. Indeed, upholding the law enables UNHCR to carry out its mandate effectively by ensuring the protection of a displaced population during armed conflict, safeguarding their rights and dignity. Second, we would like to commend UNHCR for making climate change a critical area of focus in the Global Appeal 2025. We encourage you to increasingly work with the partners, IOM among others, to develop a sustainable solution, integrate climate resilience into its program, and advocate for policies that address the root causes of climate-induced displacement. Third, as we celebrate today the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, we note with appreciation that the Global Appeal emphasizes the importance of addressing their needs within displaced and stateless population. Indeed, representing 16% of the global population, persons with disability are frequently the most affected by hazard and climate-induced disasters. We expect UNHCR to continue scaling up its commitment to inclusivity, ensuring accessible and responsive progress and services. Finally, despite the negative impact of the global crisis and drastic budgetary constraints in 2024, Italy has so far responded with almost $50 million to UNHCR humanitarian activities, and some further contribution will be allocated before the end of the year. In addition, private donations from my countries have reached more than $22.7 million. Pending the approval of the new budget law to take place in the next weeks, we are confident to maintain or even increase in 2025 the level of funding of the current year to help UNHCR in fulfilling its mandate and providing assistance to the most vulnerable segments of our population. In this period of uncertainty, you can count Italy politically and financially on support of your organization. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you. And now I would like to look at the list of speakers, and we will now intervene speaking time to 3 minutes. I'd like to give the floor to the representative of the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, High Commissioner. The United Arab Emirates recognizes the critical and indispensable work of the UNHCR and yourself and your team, Mr. High Commissioner, as the world faces, as you mentioned, an unprecedented rise in displacement in the region of the Middle East and beyond due to the ongoing conflicts that have compounded and the escalating impacts of climate change to add on to that. In these challenging times, the need for humanitarian assistance has never been more urgent. The UAE remains steadfast in its commitment towards supporting the UNHCR's tireless efforts to provide life-saving protection and essential assistance to millions of refugees and displaced persons worldwide. As a testament to this commitment, we are pleased to announce our pledge of $200,000 as an unearmarked contribution to support the organization's 2025 budget. We hope that this contribution will help in further enabling the UNHCR to continue its vital mission in providing emergency relief and investing in solutions-oriented approaches. In particular, we commend the UNHCR's dedication to ensuring safe, sustainable, voluntary and dignified returns for refugees, allowing them to rebuild their lives with hope and security. In supporting your mission, we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the principles of compassion, humanity and dignity for all. Only collectively can we overcome the current challenges that we face and prevent future ones from occurring. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Thailand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. High Commissioner, Thailand wishes to join others in commending UNHCR and its staff for providing protection to persons of concern and working towards finding solutions for displaced persons and stateless persons worldwide. The Global Appeal 2025 indicated that for next year, we will witness the unprecedented scale, approximately 139 million of forcibly displaced and stateless people with budgeted needs of more than $10 billion. Thailand is concerned with this rising figure and also the reduction in funding that are necessary for the protection of UNHCR persons of concern. We also attach great importance to providing humanitarian assistance to those in need, including those affected by conflicts as well as by natural disasters, as per our long-standing humanitarian tradition. This year, we provided financial contributions to UNICEF in the areas of water, sanitation, and hygiene and nutrition to enhance efforts in addressing the rising needs of internally displaced persons in Myanmar through the Myanmar Humanitarian Response Plan, as well as to WFP to support the improvement of food security of the Rohingya population in Bangladesh. Each contribution is 1 million Thai baht in total. Moreover, as a demonstration of our solidarity with the international community and our commitment to lessen the plight of peoples in need of international protection, Thailand has recently provided an unearmarked sum of 1 million Thai baht to UNHCR. Moreover, today Thailand pledges an unearmarked sum of $20,000 to support UNSCR program in 2025. We hope that our flexible contribution will support UNSCR to continue their important work, including in addressing the humanitarian needs and saving lives of people in need of protection. I thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Montenegro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. High Commissioner, we thank you for your opening remarks and UNHCR's critical life-saving work under your helm. This is another UNHCR pledge conference that we are holding against a backdrop of unyielding emergencies and ever-evolving conflicts and crises. As the numbers, facts and challenges outlined in the 2025 Global Appeal show, we look with great concern at the UNHCR's projection of 140 million forcibly displaced and stateless persons in the coming year. And in the context of evolving conflicts as the main drivers of forced displacement and, increasingly, impacts of climate change and poor governance that generate mixed flows of refugees and migrants moving side by side on the same routes. Also in the context of protracted displacement and a limited number of those finding durable solutions. This calls for enhanced synergy and more robust joint humanitarian development, peace and climate nexus response, as well as more equitable burden and responsibility sharing among countries and donors. In this regard, we welcome UNHCR's interagency cooperation with IOM and other partners in implementing a route-based approach and addressing internal displacement, as well as UNHCR's catalytic role in mobilizing development and peace sectors while maintaining its core humanitarian and protection mandate. Mr. High Commissioner, we note with appreciation UNHCR's emphasis on sustainable responses that promote the inclusion of displaced persons in national and local structures as a beneficial model for both refugees and host communities, and on innovative approaches that build on the vision of the Global Compact on refugees and advance refuge inclusions, resilience and self-reliance, while also leveraging the recently launched Global Alliance to End Statelessness and as solutions for statelessness persons. At the second 2023 Global Refugee Forum, Member States and other stakeholders committed to taking concrete measures to facilitate refugees' access to durable solutions in a wide range of multi-stakeholder pledges with the potential to make a significant difference. It is clear that turning these pledges into action is the responsibility of the pledging entities, but UNHCR's reaffirmed commitment to do all it can to support them remains vital. Mr. High Commissioner, as a country with a long tradition of providing refuge to all those fleeing conflict, violence and prosecution, Montenegro has also continued its earmarked financial support to 2025 UNHCR's budget. From the perspective of the significant funding shortfall facing UNHCR and the global humanitarian system, our financial contribution may seem modest, yet it exemplifies our steadfast support for UNHCR's vital work, as well as our commitment to multilateralism and multilateral solution to global changes. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of the Czech Republic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. High Commissioner, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, we share High Commissioner's concerns about the unprecedented scale of displacement resulting from the increasing number of humanitarian emergencies. Your estimate of almost 140 million forcibly displaced and stateless persons in 2025 is alarming, and your work, Mr. High Commissioner, has never been more important. The Czech Republic has been a long-standing partner to the UNHCR, and we highly value our partnership, both as a country hosting refugees and as a donor. Since the unprovoked and unjustified Russian aggression against Ukraine, the Czech Republic has granted protection to more than 650,000 people, and we have very much appreciated your support in handling this crisis. Equally, we value your unique know-how, your capacities and tailor-made solutions to help refugees all over the world. Your efforts to search for sustainable support in close cooperation with partner countries and to provide long-term solutions for displaced people are commendable. At a time when the impact of climate change on human mobility only exacerbates the global needs, the role of early warning systems, preparedness and anticipatory action is crucial. Disaster risk reduction and climate security has been a long-term priority of the Czech Republic, and we appreciate the UNHCR's contribution to these efforts while implementing the Global Compact for Refugees at the national and regional level. We also welcome your efforts on prioritization, sustainable programming, humanitarian development peace nexus, increased collaboration with local partners, and effective coordination across the UN system, especially with the IOM. Over the last decade, our cooperation overseas amounted to roughly 25 million euro, allocated in Africa, Middle East or Asia. This year, we have supported UNHCR operations in Afghanistan, Mauritania and Rwanda in the total amount of 3 million euro. Further funding was provided recently in reaction to the UN flash appeal to support Lebanese and Syrian refugees. In 2025, you can rely on our continued support. While we are not in a position to make a written pledge at this stage due to our budgetary rules, we would like to announce our intention to provide initial 1 million euro in support of refugees in the Middle East and further 120,000 euro in support of Afghan refugees in neighboring countries. These commitments are to be formalized very shortly. To conclude, allow me thank you, Mr. High Commissioner, and your teams in the field for all your tireless work, often in challenging and even life-threatening conditions. Your action is irreplaceable. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I extend my appreciation to the UNHCR for convening this important event and to the High Commissioner and his team for their comprehensive updates. The global displacement crisis has surpassed a historic milestone, with over 120 million individuals forcibly displaced worldwide. Natural and man-made conflicts, disasters, poverty and unemployment continue to force people from their homes, contributing to an unprecedented figure that reflects the increasing severity of conflicts and climate-induced crises. The majority of displaced persons originate from the least developed nations, with the burden of hosting these populations overwhelmingly borne by countries in the global south. Iran continues to shoulder an immense responsibility as a major host country for refugees, with the number of arrivals exceeding the populations of many countries. Over 1 million Afghan nationals entered Iran in just the first half of 2024, compounding the long-term pressures on our infrastructure, economy and social services. Despite these overwhelming challenges and minimal international support covering less than 5% of hosting costs, Iran provides critical services including education, healthcare and shelter to refugees and undocumented migrants alike. The emergency situation in Afghanistan persists. Instability in our neighboring country has created a continuous flow of mixed migration involving refugees, asylum seekers and economic migrants. This phenomenon will not diminish without comprehensive and collaborative international efforts to stabilize Afghanistan and support its reconstruction. We urge the global community to reinvigorate voluntary repatriation initiatives coupled with tangible measures to rebuild Afghanistan's infrastructure. Moreover, responsibility sharing must evolve beyond traditional financial aid models. The global refugee crisis demands innovative funding mechanisms such as blended finance, public-private partnership, and leveraging new financial instruments to ensure sustainable and impactful support for host countries. Such approaches can enhance the credibility and sufficiency of funding and reduce reliance on limited ad hoc contributions. The pledging conference is a critical opportunity to reaffirm our collective commitment to equitable responsibility sharing and innovative solutions to alleviate the burden on host countries. We must work together to address the root causes of displacement and prioritize durable solutions, with voluntary repatriation as the preferred outcome. Stabilizing countries of origin and rebuilding infrastructure are essential to ensuring host nations can manage the burden while offering displaced populations hope for a secure and dignified future. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Lithuania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. High Commissioner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to be part of this pledging conference and speak on behalf of the Republic of Lithuania. Lithuania fully aligns itself with the statement of the European Union. I wish to take this opportunity to express my country's gratitude to the UNHCR for the long-lasting partnership and cooperation. Mr. Chairperson, Mr. High Commissioner, today's world unfortunately does not look brighter, and we share your assessment and concerns regarding the growing numbers of forcibly displaced and stateless persons. We continue to witness conflicts, violence, and abuses amidst the increasing challenges posed by the global climate crisis and unresolved pandemic management. The ongoing war of aggression by Russia against Ukraine further exacerbates the already dire humanitarian situation. Alongside this, we face catastrophic conditions in Gaza, Sudan, and Lebanon, as well as ongoing crises in other regions. These challenges demand our collective efforts and additional resources to address the urgent needs of those affected and to work towards sustainable solutions. Lithuania reiterates its unwavering commitment to international humanitarian community efforts to protect and assist forcibly uprooted people, to meet their basic needs and guarantee the respect of their human rights. For the purpose of implementation of the Global Refugee Forum commitments and to address the needs of UNHCR Global Appeal 2025, we would like to announce the Lithuanians pledge to contribute €200,000 to the 2025 year's budget. Let me assure you that my country is ready to take part in our common efforts to reflect the need of global solidarity and innovative approaches to support displaced populations and their host communities. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Sudan.
Thank you, Excellency. Sudan extends its deepest appreciation to the UNHCR under your able leadership, Mr. High Commissioner Filippo Grandi, and your tireless efforts as the front line of the global displacement crisis. Your work has been instrumental in responding to the needs of the most vulnerable, particularly in my country, Sudan. Sudan, which used to be at the front of the top 7 African countries that host refugees from neighboring countries. However, the ongoing insurgency has added further complication to the already complicated situation. As Sudan is now facing unparalleled humanitarian crisis, the ongoing conflict has displaced over 12 million people internally and over 3.3 forced to flee to neighboring countries, with more than 12 million people in need for urgent humanitarian assistance. Those compounding the crisis are severe food insecurity, climate change disasters, plus the outbreaks of disease in some parts of the country. Despite these dire needs, the response remains severely underfunded. In 2024, only 40% of the $1.31 billion required to address Sudan's emergency needs was secured, leaving a funding gap of over $616 million. The shortfall has significantly hindered the UNHCR interventions with its partners and their ability to deliver life-saving assistance from food, varying to health care and education, all to protection services. Sudan remains committed to facilitating the work of humanitarian organizations, taking concrete measures to ensure the swift delivery of aid, including through cross-border crossings and also through fast-tracking processing of all administrative and logistical requirements of the international organizations. We urge the international community to, 1, fulfill their financial commitments and pledges by providing flexible and unearmarked funding, sustainable funding, to enable timely and effective response. 2, support hosting communities, especially inside Sudan, as the numbers of the IDPs, the 12 million I just referred to, are just growing bigger and bigger day by day, while the hosting communities there are not very well equipped to receive such volumes of IDPs. We need to prioritize them, ensuring that they have resources as they need it to provide all the displacement populations. And finally, prioritizing the sustainable solution by not only addressing the immediate needs, but also to empower communities and build resilience. Finally, Your Excellency, we just reiterate our thanks, gratitude, and appreciations to you and your team, and thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Estonia.
Thank you, Distinguished Chair, High Commissioner, colleagues. Estonia aligns with a statement delivered by the European Union. Thank you, High Commissioner, for your opening remarks. Estonia shares the concern you highlighted, particularly over the unprecedented and increasing levels of forced displacement. We'd like to thank you, High Commissioner, as well as UNHCR staff, for your passion and commitment to providing life-saving assistance, often in the most difficult circumstances. I'd particularly like to pay tribute to UNHCR staff and volunteers who have tragically lost their lives in the performance of their duties. Estonia took the decision to become a humanitarian donor in 1998, only 7 years after restoring our independence. Today we are a global donor, a principled donor, a consistent donor. We continue to do our part. We have supported UNHCR for over 2 decades and will continue to do so. At the end of last year, Estonia made a multi-year core contribution of €2,100 for this and the next year. Estonia will also look for opportunities to support UNHCR's activities in acute and protracted crises around the world. Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine continues to cause human suffering and driving forced displacement in our region. We see humanitarian needs in Ukraine rising due to Russia's deliberate attacks against Ukraine's civil and energy infrastructure. High Commissioner, we stand at a turning point. The humanitarian system can no longer continue as it has in face of mounting challenges. We need to rethink how we operate. With the increasing funding cap, we need to focus on efficiency and transparency. We welcome the initiative on sustainable responses and call on the UNHCR to work with development and peace actors on the ground while focusing on its core mandate. Lastly, High Commissioner, it was a pleasure to host you in Estonia. We reiterate our support to UNHCR and look forward to continuing our excellent cooperation in the future. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to the representative of Kenya.
Thank you, Chairperson, High Commissioner, Excellencies. Let me thank UNHCR for convening this pledging conference, and thank you, High Commissioner, for your leadership in these very difficult times. This pledging conference comes at a moment when humanitarian needs and displacements of persons is regrettably at a record high. We gather here amidst more horrendous, concurrent and high-impact crises globally. Both violent conflicts and adverse impacts of climate change are intensifying on a very disturbing high trajectory. While new conflict remains a major concern, protected and mutating situations linger. Moments like this can trigger despair, but also moments can trigger radical transformation that alter the course of events to save lives, restore human dignity, and build resilience. For donors who continue to finance the efforts to host, assist, and to protect refugees, we thank you for your generosity and urge you to continue and scale up these endeavors. We also call upon more donors to step up on this collective engagement. For fellow hosts who continue hosting refugees, some for very protracted periods, despite the needs of our host countries, we thank you for your continued patience, generosity, and contributions. As a major and long-standing host for refugees, Kenya remains concerned over the gap between raising humanitarian needs and resources to address them. We take note of the UNHCR 2024 underfunded report and further express our concerns that 7 of the most underfunded operations are within our neighborhood. As the number of refugees is at a record high, the need for solidarity in burden and responsibility sharing has never been greater. We have seen this solidarity exercised in some refugee contexts and call upon the global community to ensure the same solidarity in burden and responsibility sharing, indeed, for all refugees everywhere. It is important that all crises everywhere receive adequate and financial and material support. Ensuring attention to all crises is also in line with our humanitarian principles. Unearmarked funding remains crucial to ensure that UNHCR has the agility to address humanitarian needs as and when they occur. We appeal this consideration to all donors to ensure that the financing for the humanitarian sector gives humanitarian organizations and the UNHCR in this case the agility they need to do their life-saving work. As consistently noted in other meetings of UNHCR, Kenya expressed concerns over the persistent underfunding of Impact Area 4 dubbed SOL on securing solutions. We take note and welcome the 16% projected increase in funding for the solutions outlined in the presentation. We urge UNHCR to uphold the trend in including through leveraging partnerships with peace and development actors and robust engagement with the countries of origin. Amidst escalating needs and fewer resources to address them, it is crucial to focus on addressing the root causes of displacement for prevention, while also ensuring that people can return home in dignity and safety. I thank you for your kind attention.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to the representative of Iceland.
Thank you, Chair. High Commissioner, 2024 and the outlook for 2025 are a stark reminder of the need for a strong, agile and well-resourced UNHCR. This can only be realized through collective action. Iceland has over the years steadily worked to deepen its partnership with UNHCR through quality funding, with heavy emphasis on core contributions. We are convinced that this is the most efficient way to ensure that UNHCR is fit for purpose in this era of relentless emergencies and crises without end. Iceland therefore takes pride in its 5-year framework agreement in effect until 2028, which sets the annual limit for Iceland's core contributions. We then endeavour each year to provide a top-up and over-deliver. This year we did so on at least one occasion in the context of the Sudan crisis, in the hope that this would increase UNHCR's life-saving operational agility. Beyond core contributions, Iceland provides predictable and flexible funding for UNHCR's operations in a number of protracted and often forgotten and underfunded crises. Against this backdrop, we are pleased to announce a 2-year extension of our flexible multi-year commitment to the Afghanistan crisis. Similarly, we recognise the importance of continuing to provide UNHCR with the maximum foresight and flexibility possible in its activities in the Central Sahel. We are therefore adding another year to our existing multi-year commitment. Our multi-year Yemen pledge is still in effect, and a flexible and long-standing commitment to the Syria crisis remains in place until 2027. As for Ukraine, contributions to UNHCR's work has not faltered, and it has not come at the expense of other crises. Planning for 2025 is underway. With tomorrow's launch of the Global Humanitarian Overview, and in keeping with our tradition, Iceland will strive to respond to newly emerging or surging emergencies in the course of 2025, with a focus on quality funding, to ensure the level of responsiveness and adaptability that beneficiaries, hosts and donors alike expect of UNHCR. In closing, Iceland recognises that UNHCR cannot do it alone. We therefore do our utmost to ensure a holistic approach, and in line with our sustained financing of UNHCR, we apply the same logic to our partnerships with our other key humanitarian partners and our development partners. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Uganda.
Thank you, Chair. A special thank you to the High Commissioner and Director Dominic for your eloquent overview of the tough realities that continue to unfold globally amidst the worsening humanitarian crisis. Chair, today is not an opportunity to just resound solidarity with 120 million people, but it's actually an opportunity to announce shared responsibility with hosting states like Uganda, and even more with our hosting communities whose generosity directly dictates our government's refugee policy. As a hosting state of over 1.76 million refugees, receiving an average of 13,000 refugees every month for the last 3 years, we are all ears to the announcement at the end of this pledging conference. Dominique, I can't wait to hear that figure. Unfortunately, as a hosting state, we do not have a choice when it comes to pledging. We do so every day. These people are on our land, and therefore we implement our pledge every day. So it's unfair that Dominique will not announce a figure that Uganda contributes. Chair, in a special way, we would like to thank the High Commissioner for his recent visit to Uganda. Thank you, Mr. Filippo, for flying the humanitarian flag very, very high. But most, thank you for your humane approach to this cause. As you rightly shared in your remarks, your visit was also a reminder of the real bitter truth that refugees in Uganda continue to face. I was privileged to be a part to listen to those harrowing stories from the 7 young women that also doubled as young mothers who have reduced the whole mission, government, and UNHCR to tears. No woman, and I repeat, no woman, as a woman speaking, should ever witness their daughters being raped. No woman should ever have their bellies cut and ripped open under the guise of terror, neither subjected to sexual torture or compelled to perform sexual acts with their own children or their fathers. And as harrowing as this sounds, I'm being very modest and careful in not repeating the exact painful experiences that we listened. High Commissioner can attest to this. But why are we laboring to resound these painful stories at a pledging conference where I'm sure you're interested in hearing figures on what we are announcing? We do so because we joined the High Commissioner and Dominique to call to respond generously to this pledging. For a minute, assume that these needy people with those harrowing stories are in your neighborhood or they are in your land. And in addition to the trauma they have run from, they meet the reality that there are no funds to support or assist to restore hope. As a host, we have played our part. We have rescued them from insecurity and silenced the horrifying sound of the gunshots that they ran from. The next, we count on everyone here. And like the High Commissioner said, we are happy to hear many states pledge an earmarked funding. And it is true that earmarking only undermines efficiency and paralyzes real-time response. I'm happy today to pledge and announce that we as a country and the government will continue to protect refugees and afford them refuge as a matter of principle. And we are calling on every donor to do so also as a matter of principle, irrespective of our different political interests. Finally, the time is now to choose the right side of history. High Commissioner's asks today are not too much of us. And if Uganda, a low-income country, maintains a principled position on hosting refugees amidst our real socio-economic challenges, our partners in a better financial state can definitely do more and should indeed do more. And we are grateful to those that are already doing this. Just keep on going. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to the representative of the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. We appreciate the presentation and the global appeal given, as well as heed the call of the High Commissioner. The Philippines' consistent contribution to the UNHCR is a testament to our steadfast commitment to supporting the global response to the urgent needs of refugees, stateless, and displaced persons. Last year, we increased our contribution and in line with our enduring support, the Philippines is honored to announce our modest unearmarked contribution of $150,000 for the UNHCR's 2025 programs. We hope that this support will help address the needs of the forcibly displaced persons and thus form part of the broader global response. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor now to the representative of the Russian Federation.
President, High Commissioner, Russia considers the activities of taking care of refugees and displaced persons as one of the core tasks and priorities for us in the humanitarian sphere. Working with UNHCR, we traditionally place great importance on our work together as part of our foreign policy. Given the increasing number of persons in need of protection, the increase in humanitarian needs and the lack of financing which is noted, our country intends to carry on to be a responsible and reliable donor to the UNHCR. Pursuant to the government's resolutions, we intend to, for 2025, make a voluntary contribution of $2 million. Part of these resources will be unearmarked, and others will be earmarked for financing programs agreed upon with the UNHCR. At the same time, we must express our regret that the anti-Russian sanctions have, in a considerable way, impeded transferring Russia's voluntary contribution donor funds to the UNHCR budget. To conclude, I would like to express our high esteem for the invaluable work carried out by the UNHCR, the comprehensive efforts aimed to provide humanitarian assistance to the millions of displaced persons and to support peace, security and stability throughout the world. And here we intend to provide comprehensive support in the future as well to UNHCR. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of Qatar.
السيد المفوض السامي، السيدات والسادة الحضور الكريم، تحية طيبة وبعد.
Mr. Chairperson, Mr. High Commissioner, warm greetings. We would like to point out the efforts undertaken by the UNHCR under the leadership of Mr. Grandi to protect the refugees and alleviate their suffering, to safeguard their rights and to find durable solutions for their plight. The UNHCR Global Appeal 2025 has illustrated the magnitude and gravity of the refugee and IDP crisis facing our world today. Their increasing numbers to nearly 140 million people, deterioration of their humanitarian situation due to new conflicts, and failure to resolve long-term crises require the international community to continue joint coordination, burden sharing, and to provide the necessary support for the humanitarian development response efforts of refugees and their host countries and communities. In this regard, the State of Qatar condemns the aggression, attacks, and heinous crimes committed by the Israeli occupying forces against the Palestinian people and their deliberate targeting of refugees and IDP camps, UNRWA schools, and civilian facilities housing them. We therefore call upon the international community to continue to provide various types of adequate support to humanitarian responses plans and to operations for Palestinian refugees and displaced persons to alleviate their suffering and ensure that they have access to what enables them to live in dignity, and to continue to provide more support to UNRWA to carry out its mandate. We express our rejection of any attempt aimed at ending or reducing its role. The State of Qatar, both governmentally and non-governmentally, and based on its belief in humanitarian responsibility, the spirit of international share burning has been keen to be among the most prominent supporters of the efforts of the United Nations and its agencies to help refugees and displaced persons around the world without any discrimination. In this regard, the State of Qatar launched last week with the International Federation of Football Association, FIFA, the activities of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022 Legacy Fund, with funding of $50 million, with the aim of implementing a series of community programs in cooperation between the State of Qatar and 3 organizations, including the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the World Health Organization, and the World Trade Organization. With regard to refugees, the fund will support programs that will foster millions of refugees and people displaced by war, conflict, and persecution, enhance their resilience and self-sufficiency, provide them with basic services, help them rebuild their lives in peace and dignity, promote social inclusion, and support the communities concerned. Last April, the Qatar Fund for Development and UNHCR signed a US $8 million, which is a multi-year agreement in flexible funding to support UNHCR's global humanitarian response. In addition, there are several projects that are still in the process of development and signing between the Qatar Fund and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, most notably the program to support healthcare referrals for Syrian refugees in Zaatari and Azraq camps in Jordan, worth more than $4 million, and a grant agreement to support Syrian refugee families in Lebanon and to relieve pressure on the host community worth $4 million. The QFFD is also in the process of signing a grant agreement with the UNHCR in the amount of $5 million on improving housing conditions and public and community infrastructure in Ukraine. In conclusion, the State of Qatar affirms that it will continue to provide all necessary support to the efforts of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to enable it to implement its humanitarian programs and activities around the world, and to enhance its ability to respond to the increasing humanitarian needs resulting from waves of refugees and forced displacement. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor now to the representative of Poland.
Thank you, Chair. Poland aligns itself with the EU statement. Mr. High Commissioner, thank you for your opening remarks, which are no less alarming than those we heard at the last EXCOM meeting in October. Overlapping global challenges, war-stricken Ukraine, the catastrophic situation in Sudan, the very fragile situations in Lebanon and Syria, and other numerous crises create a complex patchwork of growing humanitarian emergencies to which UNHCR must respond in accordance with its mandate. We are well aware that the organization's resources are increasingly stretched. At this point, we would like to express our gratitude for all the efforts made by the UNHCR and its staff to address and improve the situation of forcibly displaced persons throughout the world. In this context, we also commend the steps taken by the UNHCR to prioritize its efforts to strengthen its cooperation with other agencies and to broaden the scope of donors in order to fill the remaining funding gaps. Mr. Chair, my country, which is hosting the largest number of refugees in its history, due to brutal, senseless and unprovoked aggression of one of our neighbors against another, is well aware that the significant financial and organizational burden that such assistance entails. Despite these circumstances, Poland has always shown a multifaceted and geographically diverse commitment to helping all people under UNHCR's mandate. We have applied a multi-track approach by donating to UNHCR to alleviate the effects of humanitarian crisis, for instance, in Sudan and in Armenia. I'm also pleased to announce that only last week Poland decided to respond to the UNHCR's October emergency appeal for the Lebanon-Syria influx and to contribute to the Assad program, still in 2024, with a sum of approximately €1 million. Mr. High Commissioner, to conclude, let me assure you that once our budget for 2025 is finalized and enters into force, we'll make every effort to continue our financial support to your office in the coming year with a 360-degree approach to the humanitarian emergencies and with the ultimate aim of providing tangible assistance to people in need. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the representative of Iraq.
السيد المفوض السامي المحترم.
Thank you, President, High Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen.
في ظل الظروف الاستثنائية التي تمر بها أو التي يمر بها وضع العالم بشكل عام، ما يجعلها في موقع لا تحسد عليه بين انخفاض الموارد بشكل كبير وارتفاع حجم الأزمات وما يرافقه من تزايد أعداد الفئات التي تستهدفها المفوضية.
We have seen a sharp increase in the number of persons requiring the protection of the UNHCR, whilst accompanying all displaced persons, refugees. Today, we are taking the floor to insist upon the importance of identifying the origins of these humanitarian crises. the war conducted by the occupying forces on a daily basis against the Palestinian people. It's targeting humanitarian organizations, including UNRWA. And we're also seeing the crises in Lebanon, in Sudan, and we're seeing in Syria as well, where the number of refugees is increasing day upon day. In addition, we have the climate crisis. The international community is not finding any solution to climate change, but what we could do is to bring an end to all of these wars of aggression. We express our full support to the UNHCR in all of the efforts to support countries in our region, to support Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and to express our solidarity with them. We must share the burden and increase the international contribution to deal with these exceptional crises. We reiterate our praise and thanks to the High Commissioner and to his office for all efforts deployed. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you, Madam. Now I'd like to give the floor to the ACNUR, to the Director General of Spain and the Chair of the Standing Group in this respect. Chair, High Commissioner, Director, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for me it is a great honor to be here with you today and to speak on behalf of all of the national actors at UNHCR.
Standing Group represents 11 national partners from Argentina, Australia, Germany, Japan, New Zealand, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom and the United States of America. Entrusted with UNHCR name, logo and brand, we play a crucial role for UNHCR in mobilizing private sector funds for refugees and awareness for the cause. We work closely with UNHCR, linked by our shared mission and commitment to supporting forcibly displaced people. Our collaboration is grounded in mutual respect. National partners focus on fundraising and building meaningful connections with individuals, corporates, and foundations, channeling this generosity so UNHCR can carry out its critical work, saving life, protecting rights, and creating a better future for people forced to flee their homes. The funding that we national partners raise continues to make a significant contribution to UNHCR operations globally. In 2024, funding by national partners will account for more than 55% of the UNHCR annual private sector income from corporations, foundations, philanthropists, and millions of individual donors globally. Of these funds, a significant portion was flexible in nature. We are also proud that today we feature together with many of you among UNHCR's top 20 global donors, including my own organization, España con ACNUR, alongside USA for UNHCR and Japan for UNHCR. Our capacity to generate flexible funding is the result of UNHCR's foresight and strategy to invest in fundraising channels that provide predictable and sustainable income to UNHCR. National partners serve as a vital link between the public and UNHCR. Collectively, national partners are speaking to millions of individuals around the world on a daily basis. Our donors are deeply concerned about the compounding impact of war, famine, and climate change, and they are equally determined to contribute to efforts that promote peace and to find durable solutions that offer safety, opportunity, and hope to displaced people. We often see the UN Refugee Agency on the news, responding to wars and natural disasters, but much of the support made possible by our donors goes behind headlines. This year, we have raised significant funds to ensure refugee children in multiple countries have access to a decent education, providing hope for a better future and transforming not only their life, but their communities too. We act as a bridge to corporations around the world that are committed to making a difference, working together with UNHCR to find solutions that create lasting, positive impact, building connections with organizations that recognize the skills and the experience refugees bring, helping to strengthen their workforce while giving individuals the opportunity to rebuild their life in new communities. To our government representatives present here, these individuals and organizations are your citizens and communities, standing in solidarity with UNHCR and the refugees. We are proud to work alongside UNHCR with your constituents in making an impact and providing a solution for refugees around the world. Chairperson, these turbulent and uncertain times call for even stronger support. We feel our responsibility deeply, and we know that everyone present in this room shares that commitment. Solidarity is at the heart of our collective work. We stand before you as an expression of the ability to act together. Let us all do everything we can to help the 123 million displaced people today. In closing, we wish to express our strong and unwavering commitment to the UN Refugee Agency and to the millions of forcibly displaced and stateless people. I am pleased to announce that with the continued support of our national partner, we pledge to commit $355 million to UNHCR in 2025. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I would like to express my sincere thanks to all of the delegations which have expressed their support through their financial contributions.
Distinguished delegates, it is my pleasure to summarize the preliminary results of the funds that have been pledged and already committed to UNHCR and that will allow the office to continue its operations into 2025. Subject to final verification, detailed results will be posted on the Global Focus website and shared with the permanent missions. At this point, I can announce a total of $1,143 million towards UNHCR's programs for 2025, trusting that further funds will be made available in the first half of the year. In addition, a total of $283 million has also been pledged for 2026 and beyond. Please note that this amount does not include the announcement of $355 million which was made today by Mr. Francesco Siaka on behalf of UNHCR's private sector partners. In addition, in-kind contributions have been pledged. In accordance with the International Public Sector Accounting Standard, IPSAS, the value of these contributions will be determined and recorded when goods and services have been delivered.
I would now like to invite the High Commissioner to give us a few closing remarks. You have the floor, Mr. High Commissioner.
Muchas gracias, Embajador.
Thank you, Ambassador.
You heard the figures. I won't repeat them except to note that the overall pledges by governments, so excluding the pledge that we heard from the national partners, amounting to $1.14 billion, is the highest that we have ever recorded at a pledging conference. So thank you very much. Thank you for the very special effort that many of you made. And please in whatever way is most appropriate, convey our thanks to the citizens of your countries that contributed to this very good result. I want to, we're not into too many ratings, but still, I want to flag that a very special thanks to the 10 top pledgers, the United States, Denmark, Sweden, the Netherlands, Germany, Norway, Japan, Switzerland, the Republic of Korea, and Ireland, that were the highest pledges. A very special thanks also to the 5 countries that topped the unearmarked or flexible funding list, that is Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Switzerland, because, like we said many times, these are very important quality contributions. I want to thank all those, and we heard several, that announced funding higher than in previous years or resumed funding after an interruption. And this includes, in particular, this includes many countries, but I want to single out in particular Bulgaria, Lithuania, and Armenia. Not all spoke, but they presented pledges, and these are significantly higher pledges than in previous years. Big or small, when you have an increase, this is a very important signal that you provide to this community. Many thanks to the national partner associations who, through Francesco Sciacca, mentioned their very ambitious but legitimate targets. We count on you. I would like to recall that we are projecting this year is not finished, and much of the non-government funding, or a substantial portion, comes towards the end of the year. We're still projecting around $600 million in non-government funding. This is, in absolute terms, the second largest contribution to UNHCR after the United States. So it's very significant, and much of that, not all of that, but much of that is collected through national partner organizations, so a special thanks to them. And a special thanks also, lastly, to countries that host large numbers of refugees and that made the pledges today. A few more points in addition to my comments on the statistics that the chairman has shared with us. First of all, this is a great result, but we should not be complacent. We're still talking about 10% of the budget that is presented in the global appeals. This is a very good result for the beginning of the year, but I take very literally the commitments made by many of you that as soon as your budget laws are approved, as soon as parliaments approve, you can make further pledges. We're still talking about less than 30 countries pledging today, so a minority of the overall membership of the United Nations. I want to echo an important point made, if I recall, by the ambassador of Ireland, who mentioned the importance of not neglecting any crisis. There are too many crises that, especially in this very earmarked system of funding, are penalized by lack of funding. So sometimes, even if the overall funding is good, you still have big pockets of underfunding, especially in some less visible situations that are regrettable, and I would like to really flag it to your attention. There were several mentions of contribution to CERF, the Central Emergency Response Fund. That's very good. Please contribute to CERF. It's in 2022, we received $70 million from the CERF Central Fund. In 2023, we received $96 million from CERF. And this year, I think we are on course to projecting about 70 million again. We're not yet there. We're about at 50 million. Nevertheless, one way or the other, and you know, SURF is very much linked to emergencies, it is an important contributor to our operations. So what you contribute to SURF is very important for UNHCR. Thanks to all of you who mentioned the sustainable responses. This is not just about UNHCR, as you mentioned, many of you mentioned. This is about the humanitarian system as a whole needing to move towards sustainable responses. Today and tomorrow, I can't remember the exact dates, the global humanitarian appeal will be launched. As a matter of fact, that's why the Deputy High Commissioner is not here, because she's on her way to Nairobi, where she will participate in the Africa launch of the global appeal, the overall humanitarian appeal. But I think that you know, the challenge is bigger than UNHCR. As I told you, I sat in the Chief Executives Board with the Secretary General a few weeks ago. I sat in the first interagency standing committee, the humanitarian coordination body of the humanitarian community, chaired by the new emergency relief coordinator, Tom Fletcher, yesterday, and this sustainability was really at the heart of all our discussions. Thanks very much to all those who mentioned the high-level officials meeting that will take place in December next year, in a year's time. That will also mark the 75th anniversary of this organization, of UNHCR. It's very important that we accelerate the implementation of the pledges of last year's Global Refugee Forum, because that will be the moment of reckoning, the moment in which we will take stock not only of the financial pledges, but also of the policy and other solidarity pledges that were expressed at the GRF, looking, of course, ahead to the next GRF in 2027. So thank you all for this great results of today. We should be pleased. We should not sit on the laurels. We should keep working for more contributions to come and more work to come in the next year. And I'd like to end by recalling the words that we heard from the delegation of Uganda, who said, you know, host countries fulfill their pledges every day. And we owe it to them, to the host communities on the front lines, and of course to the refugees and displaced, to keep up this commitment and the good pledges. Thank you very much, everybody.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. Now, I would like to express my thanks to all of the states for their unflagging support to UNHCR and the vulnerable populations it serves. I would also like to emphasize that the support which we provide comes in many different forms and channels, through generous financial contributions, through the welcoming of affected populations, and through the welcome extended to resettled persons, as well as through promotion activities. It is through these channels, every one of which is essential, that we collectively express our solidarity with refugees, stateless persons, and internally displaced persons. This enables their immediate protection and facilitates the achieving of lasting solutions. I would also like to thank the UNHCR's national partners for their very significant contributions. UNHCR continues to count on all of you for your ongoing cooperation and support. Thank you very much. And the sitting is lifted.